Yes, Jenny.
Thanks, Chair. I want to go back to land values. I know that we spoke about it at the beginning, but I'm keen to bring in Jeremy's view specifically on this. What's your assessment on what the impact of this policy could have on land values?
It's, with all other things also going on, I think at the moment, once we get past any immediate shock from this, I'm inclined to be with the OBR and most other commentators that it is probably neutral. What it would do over time is tend to disadvantage people who farm as individuals in the marketplace because they face this loss of cash. It leaves those outside buyers who are looking to buy the smaller parcels because it's amenity or something tangible to own or hobby farming or whatever else it is. Those are below the million or still getting the 20% threshold. They're in that market. And those who are farming or holding land through vehicles that don't die, like companies, like charities, institutions, those are still unaffected because it's only individuals who die. And so their liquidity remains in the marketplace. So you probably have a shift, and this is an answer at the UK level. Yeah. I was talking with somebody in Scotland who's farming at one end of the peninsula. His market may be very much a farmer market, and that may have particular effects. But taking the UK market as a whole, there doesn't seem to be a particular reason to suspect that land values move for this at this point. Okay,
understood. Thank you very much. I think at the heart of the debate and the conversation around this is about data and about modelling. And on some side of the arguments, people say it's not going to have a detrimental effect, and on the other side, people say that it does. And I've certainly spoken to a lot of farmers in my own constituency about it. I'd like to bring in David and Aaron, particularly on this question. What assessment have you made or done, and what modelling have you carried out that looks at beyond just land values and cost of land, and actually look at the viability of this? So we know that a 10-year interest-free repayment for a £100,000 tax bill would be £10,000 a year. We also know for £1 million it would be £100,000 a year. We also know that in areas like the east of England, where it's a very dry region, farmers are investing heavily in infrastructure. They're taking out debt, they're taking out loans, they're taking out mortgages, not for the land itself, but to invest. And we've heard from Stuart, and it's well versed, that often profit is 1%, 0.5%. So the viability of the modelling, the viability of the ability for people to pay this, what assessment's been done for that, taking in debt, investment, etc. And as a part two of that, sorry, I know you're about to jump in and answer, and as a part two of that, if you've done modelling, if you've done assessments of that, is there a part two to this that looks at what the impact that will be on future investment in farming, in agriculture, and in the investment that the farming communities need as well?
So now that we've seen the reform that's been proposed, we are very interested in exactly this question, because I think it's really important to look at, when we set whatever that threshold is going to be, which is currently proposed to be £1 million, understanding what those liquidity effects are. When you look at why this relief was introduced, it was introduced explicitly because of the concern about family farms and the liquidity constraints they would face. So we are now at Centax doing modelling using the secure, completely anonymised HMRC tax data that we've used for other work to look at what the incomes for people who are making these claims are, to look at what the incomes were in the years before death, right, as the best you can do to try to approximate what it will be in the future, to understand actually what would they be able to in principle save, what other assets are in the estate as well that might be available, that are non-farm assets that might be liquid, that we use available to pay off part of that.
Jenny, can I invite you to start the questioning, please?
Thank you, Chair. This is a question to all of you, but Tom, I might start with yourself and work my way down, if that's okay. What discussions did you have with the Treasury and with government ahead of this announcement on the 30th of October?
The only official discussions were the comments that had been made by the Secretary of State some 11 months ahead of it, that there wouldn't be any changes to agricultural property relief, which were public statements which were then reaffirmed a couple of weeks later. We did get wind that something was being discussed the Wednesday before the budget, and at that point we went public with our campaign to write to MPs, and we had over 3,500 members wrote to MPs ahead of the budget, but there was no formal consultation at all.
Thank you.
I agree with everything that Tom has just said. I think the nature of agricultural property relief has been in the air for a long time, and because we're very much aware of that, we had made representations, detailed representations, to the Treasury about the effect we thought that unconsulted changes to APR might have. So we were never, our views weren't sought, but we did make representations.
Ahead of the 30th?
Yes.
Yeah, great, thank you.
Yes, we also made representation to ministers as also to the Treasury officials. We weren't able to get in to see Rachel Reeves, which would have been a huge help to us, and they took many notes, and that's where we're up to.
Okay, great, thank you. So that was obviously before the 30th, and what communications have you had since the 30th? How receptive has that been? And may I ask what specific recommendations you have made?
So there's been multiple conversations, and I don't think it would be good use of time to go through all of them. But the first meeting on the Monday after the budget that I had with the Secretary of State, Steve Reed, James Murray, the Exchequer Secretary to the Treasury, had asked to be present at that meeting on the Monday morning. At that moment, I asked James what the question was that the Treasury had asked themselves. I said, if we understand the question, we can help you find a solution. But until we know the question, it's impossible for us to help you. And it appeared at that point there is no question. And so then it's been incredibly difficult to actually find and recommend a resolution, because if it is a tax loophole, if that is the priority, is to try and close the perceived tax loophole for those who've made wealth outside of agriculture, to invest in agricultural land, to pass it down, then we will all work together to close the loophole. But until we actually know what the exam question is, it is very difficult. So we've had multiple meetings since then, and you know, up to the Prime Minister. The Chancellor so far has refused to engage.
Can I be explicitly clear that in you saying that you're saying that if the government says there's no U-turn, that you haven't come forward with a solution to make this a better policy? Is that what you're saying?
We have all written, all of the organisations represented today have written to the Prime Minister asking for a pause and a consultation. I think this is such a complicated area. There are many ways of making the policy less bad, but a full consultation will hopefully arrive at the right solution rather than a less bad solution.
Understood. Thank you. Victoria?
I think we've probably had all the meetings that are on the list of people you ought to meet immediately of having given them bad news. What I feel the problem has been is that we've had long meetings and no sense whatsoever that any listening is happening. You know, we are talking about the outcomes, we're talking about the long-term effects on the industry, we're talking about the effects on individuals, and everybody nods and smiles and no sense of any listening. And that's why this is such a really helpful inquiry to sit in on, actually. We can argue till the cows come home about the 500 and the 70,000, but if there's no acceptance of the assumption that we're muddling up business assets with personal wealth in this move, and therefore you are going to end up attacking an industry and people's businesses, and that's completely unnecessary.
Understood. And you had the same question that I asked Tom. If are your recommendations based on trying to improve the policy that's been put forward rather than advocating for a U-turn? And if it is the former, what recommendations have you put forward that you felt need to be heard?
Well, the first thing is the pause. Let's stop and think. Let's not just crash forwards, hoping against hope that this will turn out to be, it'll turn out all right or it'll turn out differently. We agree with the two other associations represented here, a pause to really consider whether there should be a full U-turn and a different approach to agricultural property relief and business property relief. If it's a loophole, HMRC has everything it has in its power to change or close that loophole. And between us, we could find a great many ways of doing that. But this is not the answer to that question. So, in a way, what you're asking is, you've got two questions there. Should we stop? Yes. Should we have a consultation? Yes. But one of those questions, the important questions, is, was this the right thing to do in the first place? Could we actually all be a bit cleverer about this?
Thank you. Robert?
It's the unintended consequences of the tenant sector that's my concern. The evening of the budget, we met with Daniel Zeigner, and we explained to him in words of one syllable the effect that is going to happen. We're going to see shorter-term tenancies, risk-averse landlords, and we're going to see notices to quit to free land to sell pay tax. You've already heard from one of your other evidence providers today about the fact that they see in the tenant sector, and there is a huge concern with me. You've also heard today regarding the estates that are not affected, the church, the Crown, the Duchy, the Trust, being charitable statuses, the colleges. So we have the private landlords who have been long-term letters of land for hundreds of years. They still want to let land, but if they're going to be affected by the tax implication, then they will have to make the land vacant possession, and tenants will lose their livelihoods.
Yeah, understood. Thank you.